He was a trapper who followed wolf tracks deep into the wilderness, and what he found changed everything he thought he knew about survival, family, and what it means to be human. Can you imagine tracking animals through a frozen forest and discovering a small child living with a wolf pack? More wild than human and having to decide whether to tear her away from the only family she's ever known? This isn't just a story about rescue or survival. It's a story about the bonds that form in the most unexpected places, about what we lose when we're civilized, and about a man who had to choose between doing what society expected and what his heart told him was right. This really happened in the wilderness of northern Michigan in 1909. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and leave your like, because what this trapper discovered and the choice he made will challenge everything you believe about family, belonging, and the line between human and animal. What he witnessed in that frozen forest, and the decision he ultimately made, will remind you that love and family can exist in forms we never imagined. Tell me in the comments what state you're watching from, and what you would have done if you'd found a child living with wolves. It was January of 1909, and Marcus Holt was 3 days deep into the northern Michigan wilderness, tracking a wolf pack that had been raiding homesteads near the Upper Peninsula settlement of Munising. Marcus was 41 years old, a professional trapper and tracker, one of the few men who could survive alone in the brutal winter. Forests that stretched for hundreds of miles. North of Lake Superior, he'd been hired by a consortium of farmers and ranchers who were losing livestock to wolves at an alarming rate. The bounty was good, $50 for the alpha male, $25 for each additional wolf. In 1909, that was serious money, enough to get Marcus through the rest of winter and into spring. He'd tracked this particular pack for 3 days, following their prints through snow that was sometimes waist deep, sleeping in snow caves he dug with his own hands, eating dried meat and melted snow. It was brutal work, but Marcus was used to brutal. He'd been trapping and tracking since he was 14, when his father died and left him to support his mother and 3 younger siblings. The wilderness was the only life he'd ever known. On the morning of the 4th day, Marcus came across something that made him stop dead in his tracks. Mixed in with the wolf prints, clearly visible in fresh snow from the night before, were smaller prints. Human prints. A child's prints, bare feet, impossibly, in snow and temperatures well below zero. The prints were fresh, no more than a few hours old. They moved alongside the wolf tracks, not running from them or being dragged, but walking with them, part of the pack. Marcus stood there for a long moment, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. A child couldn't survive out here. Not in January, not barefoot, not alone. It was impossible. But the tracks didn't lie. Somewhere ahead of him, moving with this wolf pack, was a child. Marcus changed his mission immediately. He was no longer hunting wolves. He was following those small footprints, driven by a need to understand, to find, to save, if saving was needed. He tracked them for another 6 hours, moving carefully, staying downwind. The pack was heading toward a rocky outcrop he knew, a place where caves and overhangs provided shelter. As he got closer, he heard them. The wolves, their howls and yips, the sounds of a pack at rest, feeling safe in their territory. Marcus crept forward, using every bit of skill he'd developed over 27 years in the wilderness. He climbed a large pine tree that overlooked the rocky outcrop and positioned himself where he could see without being seen or scented. What he saw would stay with him for the rest of his life. In a clearing below, protected by rock walls on 3 sides, a wolf pack was gathered. Marcus counted 9 wolves, including a large gray alpha male and a pregnant female who was clearly his mate. And in the middle of the pack, curled up against the alpha's mate for warmth, was a child. A girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, with matted dark hair that hung past her shoulders, skin darkened by dirt and exposure, wearing nothing but tattered remnants of what might have once been a dress. She was asleep, her small body pressed against the wolf's fur, her hand resting on the wolf's flank. Marcus watched, barely breathing, as the scene unfolded. The alpha male returned from somewhere with a freshly killed rabbit. Instead of eating it himself or giving it to his mate, he brought it directly to the child. The girl woke, sat up, and took the rabbit. She didn't cook it or prepare it in any human way. She tore into it with her teeth, eating it raw, the way the wolves did. When she'd eaten her fill, she offered the remains to the alpha's mate, who accepted them. The interaction was casual, natural, familial. Marcus stayed in that tree for hours, watching. He saw the child play with 3 younger wolves tumbling in the snow, roughhousing the way wolf pups do. He saw her communicate with them, not with words but with sounds, growls and yips and body language. He saw the pack treat her as one of their own, grooming her, sharing food with her, protecting her. And he saw something else. He saw that she was happy, not in distress, not suffering. She moved with confidence, with belonging. This was her pack. These were her family. As the sun began to set and the temperature dropped even further, the pack moved into a large cave in the rock face. The child went with them, crawling on all 4s the way the wolves did. Marcus watched them settle for the night, the child once again curling up between 2 wolves for warmth. Only then did Marcus climb down from his tree, his mind reeling. He made his own camp a 1/4 mile away, far enough that the pack wouldn't detect him, and tried to process what he'd seen. A child living with wolves. Not held captive, not being eaten, living as one of them. It was impossible. It was also undeniably real. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He kept thinking about the child. Who was she? How did she end up with wolves? How long had she been out here? And most importantly, what was he supposed to do about it? The civilized answer was obvious. He should capture her, take her back to Munising, return her to human society. She was a child. She belonged with people, not animals. She needed to be saved, civilized, taught to be human again. But Marcus had seen her face, had seen the way she moved with the pack, had seen that she wasn't suffering. She was thriving. Could he really tear her away from the only family she seemed to know? Could he force her back into a world she clearly wasn't part of anymore? And even if he did, what kind of life would she have? A wild child, unable to speak, more animal than human. She'd be a curiosity, an oddity, institutionalized, probably. Would that really be better than what she had now? Marcus spent 3 more days observing the pack and the child. He watched her hunt with them, her small body moving through the snow with surprising efficiency. He watched her eat, sleep, play. He watched the wolves care for her with a tenderness that was almost human. And he noticed something else. The child had scars. Old scars on her back and arms, the kind that came from beatings. Someone had hurt this child before she ended up with the wolves. The wolves hadn't hurt her. Humans had. On the 4th night of observation, everything changed. A larger pack, 12 wolves, appeared in the territory. They were challengers, drawn by the presence of the pregnant alpha female. A fight was inevitable. Marcus watched in horror as the 2 alpha males faced off, snarling and snapping. The fight was brutal, violent, exactly what you'd expect from wild animals fighting for territory and breeding rights. The child, during all of this, had been moved to the back of the cave by the alpha female and 2 other adult wolves. They stood between her and the fighting, protecting her. But the challenging pack was larger, stronger. Marcus's pack, the one the child belonged to, was losing. The alpha male was injured, bleeding from his neck and shoulder. The rest of the pack was being driven back. Marcus made a decision without thinking. He raised his rifle and fired 3 shots into the air. The sound echoed through the forest like thunder. Both wolf packs scattered in different directions, the fight abandoned, survival instincts overriding aggression. When the noise faded and the wolves were gone, Marcus climbed down from his position and approached the cave. The child was still there, pressed against the back wall, her eyes wild with fear. Not of the wolves that had just fought. Of him, the human. Marcus approached slowly, hands visible, speaking softly. "It's all right. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm a friend." The child didn't understand his words. She growled at him, a sound so perfectly wolf-like it was eerie coming from a human throat. She bared her teeth, positioned herself to run or fight. Marcus stopped, gave her space. "Easy, easy, little one. I know you're scared. I just want to help." He reached into his pack and pulled out dried meat. He tossed a piece toward her, not too close, giving her room. The child eyed it suspiciously, then darted forward, grabbed it, and retreated. She sniffed it, then ate it in quick, tearing bites. Marcus tossed another piece. Then another. Slowly, over the course of an hour, he moved closer. The child didn't attack, didn't run. She accepted the food, watching him with wary, intelligent eyes. Finally, Marcus was close enough to touch her. "I'm going to check you for injuries. From the fight." "I'm not going to hurt you." He reached out slowly. The child flinched but didn't pull away. Marcus examined her as gently as he could. She was thin but not starving. She had minor frostbite on her feet and hands, but nothing serious. Her old scars, the ones from before the wolves, were healed but visible. Evidence of long-term abuse. "What happened to you?" Marcus asked softly. "Who hurt you? How did you end up here?" The child didn't answer. Couldn't answer. She'd lost human language, if she'd ever had it. She communicated in wolf sounds, in body language, in ways that had nothing to do with words. Marcus made another decision. "I'm not taking you away from here. Not back to people who might hurt you again. But I can't leave you alone either." The pack scattered. "They might not come back. You'll freeze without them. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to come with me for now, just until we figure this out. And if I can reunite you with your pack, I will. Is that okay?" The child tilted her head, watching him. Marcus stood and started walking toward his camp, not looking back, not forcing her. After a moment, he heard small footsteps behind him. She was following. Not because he'd captured her, because she'd chosen to. That night at Marcus's camp, the child stayed near the fire for warmth but wouldn't come close to him. She accepted food but wouldn't let him touch her. She watched him constantly, ready to bolt. Marcus talked to her even though she couldn't understand, just to fill the silence. "I had a daughter once," he said, staring into the fire. "Her name was Emma. She died when she was 4. Fever. There was nothing I could do. My wife, Sarah, she died giving birth to our son, who didn't survive either. That was 8 years ago. After that, I couldn't stay in town anymore. Too many memories. So I came out here. The wilderness doesn't judge you. Doesn't ask questions. Doesn't remind you of what you lost." He looked at the child, who was watching him with those eerily intelligent eyes. "You lost something too, didn't you? Or ran away from something? Those scars on your back, someone did that to you. Someone who should have protected you, and somehow you ended up with wolves. And they became your family, your pack. I understand that, I do. Finding family in unexpected places. Finding home where you didn't expect it." The child didn't respond, but something in her eyes softened slightly. Over the next week, Marcus didn't try to take the child back to Munising. He stayed in the wilderness, camping in the area where the pack had been, hoping they'd return. The child stayed with him not by force but by choice. Slowly, gradually, she began to trust him. She let him check her for new injuries. She ate closer to him. She slept near the fire instead of in the shadows. Marcus tried teaching her things. Her name, he decided arbitrarily, would be Luna, because she howled at the moon at night, calling for her pack. He tried teaching her the word, pointing to himself and saying, "Marcus," then pointing to her and saying, "Luna." She tilted her head, made a sound that might have been an attempt to imitate him, then went back to her wolf noises. He tried teaching her to use tools, to eat cooked meat, to wear warmer clothes. She tolerated the clothes for short periods but always removed them eventually. She preferred raw meat, and tools confused her. She was wolf, not human. Or rather, she was something in between. On the 8th day, the pack returned. Marcus heard them before he saw them, their howls in the distance. Luna heard them too. Her whole body went rigid, alert. She howled back, a long, mournful sound. Marcus felt his heart sink. He knew what was coming. Luna looked at him, and for a moment, Marcus saw conflict in her eyes. Then she turned and ran toward the howls. Marcus followed not to catch her, but to witness. He found them in the same clearing as before. The pack had returned, minus 2 wolves who'd probably been killed or driven off during the challenge. The alpha male was wounded but alive. When Luna appeared, running on all 4s through the snow, the pack erupted in sounds of joy. The wolves surrounded her, licking her face, nudging her with their noses, celebrating her return. Marcus watched from a distance, his rifle slung over his shoulder, unused. He watched Luna rejoin her pack, watched her curl up with the alpha's mate, watched her become wolf again. And he realized something. She was where she belonged, not in Munising with humans who would institutionalize her or treat her as a freak. Not with him, a lonely trapper who'd briefly imagined he could give her the family he'd lost. But here, with her pack, with the creatures who'd saved her from whatever horror she'd escaped, who'd loved her without trying to change her. Marcus could have captured her, could have taken her by force back to civilization, claimed the moral high ground of saving her. But he didn't. He watched until the pack settled for the night, Luna safe in their midst. Then he turned and walked away. He went back to Munising and told the farmers who'd hired him that the wolf pack had moved on, gone north into Canada probably, out of his tracking range. He returned their money. He didn't tell them about Luna, didn't tell anyone. It was her secret, his secret, a truth the world wasn't ready to understand. Marcus continued trapping, but he never took another job hunting wolves in that area. Every few months, he'd make his way back to that rocky outcrop, leave food in places where the pack would find it, check from a distance that they were still there, that Luna was still with them. He watched her grow over the years, watched her become more wolf than human. By the time she was 10, you couldn't tell by watching her that she'd ever been anything but wolf. She ran with the pack, hunted with them, moved with the grace and confidence of a creature perfectly adapted to her environment. In 1914, when Luna would have been about 11, Marcus made his regular check and found the pack gone. He searched for weeks but never found them. Either they'd moved to new territory or something had happened. He never knew. He never saw Luna again, but he carried her with him for the rest of his life. Marcus Holt died in 1943 at age 75. He'd lived his entire life in the wilderness, never remarrying, never having more children. In his personal journal, found after his death, he wrote extensively about Luna, about the child who lived with wolves, about the choice he'd made to let her stay with them. People would say I should have brought her back to civilization, he wrote in one entry. That I had a moral obligation to save her from the animals, but I saw how those animals treated her. With gentleness, with care, with love. I saw the scars on her back from humans who'd hurt her, and I saw her happiness with the wolves. So who was I to say she needed saving? Who was I to decide that human society was better for her than the pack that had taken her in when she had nothing? Maybe I failed her. Maybe I should have forced her back, taught her to be human again, given her a chance at a normal life. But I don't think so. I think she had exactly the life she was meant to have. I think those wolves saved her in a way no human could have. And I think letting her stay with them was the right thing to do, even if it was the hard thing to do. The story of Luna, the wolf child of northern Michigan, would have died with Marcus if not for his journal. But after his death, his journal was donated to the Michigan Historical Society. In the 1970s, a researcher studying accounts of feral children came across Marcus's detailed descriptions of Luna and the pack. The story was published in an academic journal, then picked up by mainstream media. It became one of the most well-documented cases of a feral child in American history. Anthropologists and psychologists debated Marcus's decision. Some argued he'd failed in his duty to rescue her, that he'd abandoned a child to die in the wilderness. Others praised his cultural sensitivity, his recognition that civilization isn't always the right answer, that forcing Western human norms onto someone who'd found a different way to survive was its own form of violence. The debates continued for decades, and continue still today. But what's often lost in the academic discussions is the human element. A traumatized child found a family that loved her. A lonely man found a purpose, even briefly. A pack of wolves showed more compassion than the humans who'd scarred that child's back. And a man made a choice that cost him nothing but gave a child everything she needed. That's the real story, not about savagery versus civilization, but about love, family, belonging, and the courage to let someone live the life they choose even when that choice makes you uncomfortable. We don't know what happened to Luna, whether she lived a long life with her pack, whether she ever had pups of her own, wolf children to continue the cycle, whether she remembered Marcus, the human who chose to let her be free. We don't know, but we know she had 5 or 6 years of happiness with her pack, captured in Marcus's careful observations. 5 or 6 years of running through snow, of hunting in moonlight, of sleeping warm against fur, of belonging. For a child who'd clearly known suffering before the wolves found her, maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. Marcus's decision challenges us still. What do we owe to someone who's chosen a different path? When do we rescue and when do we respect? When is our impulse to save someone actually about our own comfort, our own need to see the world in familiar ways? These aren't easy questions, but they're important ones. And Marcus Holt, a trapper in the wilderness of Michigan in 1909, had to answer them without the benefit of time or consultation or societal approval. He had to look into a child's eyes, see her happiness with her wolf pack, and choose. He chose to let her stay. He chose to honor her belonging, even when that belonging looked nothing like what humans expected. He chose love over civilization, pack over propriety, her truth over his comfort. Was he right? We'll never know for certain. But I think about Luna sometimes running through the snow on four limbs as comfortable as any wolf, and I think maybe, just maybe, Marcus gave her the greatest gift possible. The gift of being exactly who she was, without shame or correction. The gift of belonging. The gift of home. And in doing so, he honored something profound about the nature of family, about the ways love can exist outside our usual definitions, about the possibility that there are more ways to be human than we usually acknowledge. Thank you for listening to the story of Marcus Holt and Luna, the wolf child of Michigan. If this story moved you, please subscribe, leave your like, and share this video. These stories challenge us, make us think, remind us that the world is stranger and more beautiful than we imagine. Tell me in the comments what you would have done. Would you have brought Luna back to civilization? Or would you have let her stay with her pack? There's no wrong answer. Just honest reflection on what we owe to each other, to children, to the truth of who people are versus who we think they should be. Remember, family isn't always blood. Home isn't always a house. And sometimes, the wildest thing we can do is let someone be free.